Hello everyone, I'm JG and welcome back to Music Forever, where today I'm bringing you guys a brand new track review video to talk about several recently released songs I happen to hear and have some opinions on. Let's just get right into things here today with the first song I want to talk about, this new track from Injury Reserve, HPNGC, which also features JPEGMAFIA and Code Orange on it. Now this was a combination of artists that I thought was kind of interesting because JPEGMAFIA, he makes a fair bit of sense considering he occupies a similar lane musically to Injury Reserve, and even appeared on their last album that was released earlier this year. A fantastic project, by the way, if you haven't checked it out yet. But Code Orange, on the other hand, are a metalcore band, and it's pretty different from Injury Reserve and JPEGMAFIA. However, given that I really like all three artists involved with this track, I was really excited to see what was gonna happen here on this song pretty much, especially considering, like I said, the last Injury Reserve album that we got earlier this year was great. I think JPEGMAFIA has been doing some great stuff recently too, and Code Orange's last album was fantastic as well. And overall, I think this is a pretty great track. The instrumental to this track is kind of spacey sounding, a bit glitchy as well, and this is the portion of the track that Code Orange contribute to the song. They don't provide any vocals or anything to this track, and the sounds that they provide for this instrumental, they're not heavy, thunderous, industrial influenced metalcore riffs or anything like they were doing on their last record, but a lot of those sounds and a lot of that vibe that was present on some of those more atmospheric and spacey moments that the band has toyed around with in the past do happen to, I think, make their way onto the instrumental of this song as well. Listening to this thing, it's an instrumental that fits Injury Reserve and JPEGMAFIA really nicely, but at the same time, I could see the Code Orange influence in this thing, even if it's not something that immediately screams to you, this is a Code Orange track. I could definitely still see what they were responsible for here on the song, though, and I really like it. I think that JPEGMAFIA's verse on this track is really great. He brings a lot of energy to this track. His flow is fantastic. His lyrics are great, insightful, at times funny as well. Really, everything I like in a JPEGMAFIA verse happens to pop up on this track. And as for the guys in Injury Reserve, I think that the verses that they provide to this track are pretty solid as well. They're probably my least favorite part of this song, however, overall, but still, I think that they're pretty solid. I think their flows are really nice here lyrically. I think they do a nice job of tying things together as well. Really, I think this is a pretty great song, all things considered. I can kind of see why it maybe wasn't included on their last record, because while stylistically it is a bit similar to some of the ideas they played around with on that project, at the same time, it is, just slightly different in some senses when it comes to the atmosphere that this track, I think, shoots for, especially with the influences that Code Orange bring into this thing. But, yeah, overall, this is a pretty interesting collaborative track, and I think all the artists involved do, at the very least, a really good job of bringing their own respective qualities and traits onto this song to make something unique and interesting. Overall, if you're a fan of any of the artists involved here, definitely check this out. Next up, I'm going to be talking about the newest song from Swans. It's coming, it's real. This is the newest single from Swans for their upcoming record that's set to come out later this year. I believe it's in October. And overall, I like Swans quite a bit. I think that they're a really interesting band with how they switch up their sound, every few albums or so at the very least. And coming off of, a trilogy of really massive double albums, I was kind of interested to see what direction the band was going to go in on their next album. And after listening to this thing, it's apparent that it's a direction that's a bit different than what the band's been doing on their last few releases, but at the same time, it's a direction that I feel is still somewhat familiar for the group. Mostly because the sound of this track is a very folky one that almost reminds me a bit of some of the output the band was doing in the 90s on albums like White Light from the Mouth of Infinity, and personally that's one of my favorite Swans albums, so the fact that the band is kind of returning to that sound to some extent here on this new song and hopefully on the rest of this upcoming album is something that has me really excited. This song in a lot of ways feels like a track that could have been on an album like White Light from the Mouth of Infinity, but just slightly tweaked to fit the more modern Swans sound. The vocals here on this track are a bit more worn than the vocals on, the output from Swans around that time. But I think that the vocals on this track still sound really nice. The worn feel to them mixed with the production here and the kind of slow building instrumental, I think, creates a very interesting atmosphere here. I also really love the backing vocals on this track too. They add a particularly kind of like haunting feel to this song that I really like, and something I kind of alluded to before, but I like the really building feel this song has going for it. It reminds me a bit of some of Swans' more recent output, kind of condensed into this shorter track, which, you know, the song itself isn't particularly short. It's like 7 minutes or so in length, but compared to some of the more recent output from this band, it is kind of short. And ultimately what I'm trying to say here, I guess, is that this new song here kind of sounds like that 90s folky Swans mixed with what we've been hearing from Swans on their last few releases, but I think it leans more so towards that folkier side of things with some more influences from the modern stuff, as opposed to like being a 50-50 split or something. But regardless, considering I like both eras of Swans involved here, I like the direction that this album seems to be going in with this one track that we've already gotten from it. Overall, I'm pretty excited to see what we're going to be getting from these guys in the upcoming months, because I think this song is pretty great. And moving on, the final song I'm going to be talking about here today is the newest track from Danny Brown, Dirty Laundry, another artist with an album set to come out later this year that I'm highly anticipating, because Danny Brown's been a pretty consistent artist, and particularly his last album, Atrocity Exhibition, was a fantastic project, one of my favorite albums of 2016, still an album I return to rather frequently, and one that is still just a really solid hip-hop experience. I was kind of interested to see, kind of like with Swans, what direction he was going to go in on this next album of his, because kind of like Swans, but to a lesser extent, I guess, because his career's been a bit shorter in length, Danny Brown has constantly, changed things up with every release, and I wanted to see what his new sound and idea was going to be for his new upcoming record here with this new track. And overall, I'm happy to say that this track definitely has a unique sound to it compared to what he's done before in the past. The dark, hellish sound that was present on Atrocity Exhibition is just completely absent here on this new track, and instead this song, I think, goes for a bit more of a fun feel, but I think it's one that is pulled off really nicely. Danny's rapping on this track is really great. His flows here are fantastic. He has a really playful feel to his verses here that I really enjoy. Overall, I think he does a fantastic job here spitting on this track. I don't think the lyrics here on this song are super deep or insightful or anything quite like that. However, I think for what they attempt to accomplish in the context of this track, it manages to pull it off nicely enough, and I'm expecting some other cuts on the record coming later on to maybe be a bit deeper than this one. The instrumental to this track is another aspect that I really like here. Like the vocals, they have a bit of a playful feel to them. Q-Tip is responsible for the production here on this track, and I think it's really great. I love the kind of quirky electronic feel that it has. The melody that's mixed into this instrumental is really fantastic and memorable too. Overall, I think Danny Brown just pairs up really nicely with this instrumental. I think the vibe he brings to this track matches the instrumental's vibe really nicely, and the two complement each other perfectly. And, also importantly, I really like that the sound of this song is different from stuff that he's done before in the past. It, kind of says to me that this new album is also going to be something different, which is something I was hoping to see too. Overall, this is another fantastic song. I know all the tracks I've talked about here today are ones that I've really liked, but I guess sometimes that's just the way that this series on the channel works. Sometimes I talk about like 50 tracks, on here, not literally, but a lot of tracks on here, and I don't end up liking any of them. But there are some videos, like today's, where maybe I'll just talk about a few tracks, but I really like them all. And that's the case here today. Injury Reserve with JPEGMAFIA and Code Orange, Swans, and Danny Brown all brought some fantastic material to my ears this past week or so, and you should definitely give these songs a listen if you haven't done so already. But yeah, that is just my own personal opinion when it comes to the three songs that I've talked about here today. If you happen to disagree, that's perfectly fine. In fact, feel free to leave your own thoughts on these songs in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, make sure you also hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more music-related content. Things like album reviews, track reviews, things of that sort. I will be reviewing the new Swans and Danny Brown when those drop later this year. So if you want to see my thoughts on those albums when they eventually come out, make sure you subscribe, especially so you can see those reviews. Once again, thank you guys for watching this video, and stay golden.